Hello, Hare Krishna, Namaste. Welcome to number 11 of our talks on the essence of Bhakti, the Catechism of the Vaishnavas. And today we're going to be talking about forms and expansions of Bhagavan. Do you remember in our last episode we talked about different places where Bhagavan dwells, the different forms that he takes, and this lesson is to go into some detail about the form of Bhagavan. But just to give you a summary of where we were last time, because this does come up very often, there's no contradiction between Bhagavan, or Bhagavan meaning the ultimate existential plane of reality, the ultimate reality, the absolute truth. We talked about Brahman, the undifferentiated white light. We talked about Paramatma, the indwelling Godhead who's manifest everywhere, personal but manifest everywhere, and Bhagavan. The word Bhaga is easy to translate. Bhaga means opulence, and Van means one who possesses Bhagavan. Or Bhagavan, one who possesses all opulence. Now, something that does come up very regularly in philosophical talks since the days of the ancient Greeks, who gave us the word philosophy, is, can the absolute have a form? And we must categorically say yes, according to Vaishnava philosophy, which is what this talk is all about. God can have a form, except the idea of God having a form is not quite the right expression. God does not have a form. God is a form, and not like ourselves. We have a form, but God's form is He Himself. There's no contradiction between Bhagavan having a divine form, which is not subject to the problems of material nature, because it doesn't become polluted, it never becomes corrupted. It's eternal, it's infinite, and yet there is form. It's something that you have to hold in as a philosophical tension. It's a paradox, and yet it is true. Now, the ancient Greeks said that, well, we have a problem with that. And you do know that the ancient Greeks and the ancient Indians, they sort of, they traded between each other and they swapped philosophies. And the ancient Greeks said, well, we've got a problem with God or the gods having form, because form means there's a beginning and end of, let's say, a finger. Where the finger of a god ends, and it must end because, well, for something to have a form, it cannot have a form unless there's a beginning and end to the form. So where God's finger ends, something else must begin. It's not finger. It's finger, 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 and then not finger. So the ancient Greeks said that God can't possibly have a form, because that would mean that there was something that was not God. But we've discussed already the idea of vishesha, or attributes, that the Absolute has attributes which are themselves dependent on the Absolute, but which are nonetheless the Absolute Himself. So Bhagavan's body, the body of God, is composed of Sat, Chit, and Ananda, or eternity, knowledge, and bliss. Another objection that people have is that, well, you say that, but I think that because you are human, you are therefore projecting onto the Absolute the idea of human shape and human form. And this is a rather primitive idea, and the cavemen must have been thinking in this way because that was all they could conceive of, that God ultimately must look like me. Aha, said the Vedic astronomers and astrologers and soothsayers and yogis. What about this? The template, the original form, is God's. And rather than the form of God being an anthropomorphic projection from your mind to the plane of the Absolute, why isn't it that we ourselves are theomorphic? We are projections from the mind of God. So that's what we're running with. That's what we're running with. And whether we've realized it or whether we've understood it, we're running with that. And also Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, the book of Bhagavan, he reveals that only fools think that he assumes a form of flesh and blood when he comes as an avatar. So do not think that even though you can see the avatar that you're dealing with, a body of flesh and blood like yours. So the typical description of God, the God that manifests within the human heart and who creates the world, is Vishnu or Narayan. He has 4 hands displaying 2 upper, 2 lower. Now as we get into these descriptions, immediately our Western Abrahamic mind will go, no, you can't insist that this is what God looks like. You can't tell me. Well, don't forget, we've started from the beginning of saying that this is Vedic. This revelation is coming from somewhere else. It's not coming from invention. But we talked about the Vedas, and we talked about our own inability to understand the plane of the Absolute. So 4 hands, and each form has each attribute that is held in each of those arms, the Shankha, Chakra, Padma, Gada, or the lotus and the disc and the wheel and the conch. They're manifest in different ways, and each Vishnu, of which there are 24, is manifest in a different way with different symbols and different hands. We'll get onto that in a little bit. 2-handed forms of Godhead are in the absolute plane of Dwarka and Mathura. And of course Krishna in Vrindavan has 2 hands. So what is the relationship between Krishna and Vishnu? Well, one and the same person. As Prabhupada says, it's one and the same person, just manifesting different attributes according to the particular activity. So we shouldn't think that there's a competition between Krishna and Vishnu. Rather, to borrow another Greek word, there is a hypostasis. Hypostasis means the Godhead is one, manifestations are many. So this is our sort of theme for one part of our talk tonight. And of course, wherever there is a manifestation of Vishnu, there's also a consort. So with Vishnu, there's Lakshmi, and with Ram, there's Sita, and Krishna in Dwarka is Rukmini, and Krishna in Vrindavan is Radha. So God is always accompanied by Goddess, the principal attribute, the Hladini Shakti, or internal energy. So let me read to you a little section from the Srimad Bhagavatam, which I like, particularly from the Bhagavat Purana. So, the Lord's face is perpetually very beautiful and pleasing in attitude. To the devotees who see him, he appears never to be displeased, and he is always prepared to award benedictions to them. His eyes, his nicely decorated eyebrows, his raised nose, and his broad forehead are all very beautiful. The Lord's form is always youthful. Every limb and every part of his body is properly formed, free from defect. His eyes and lips are pinkish, like the rising sun. He is always prepared to give shelter to the surrendered soul, and anyone so fortunate as to look upon him feels all satisfaction. The Lord is always worthy to be the master of the surrendered soul, for he is the ocean of mercy. So 2 things we're getting here. One is the beauty of Bhagavan, and the other is the pleasing countenance of Bhagavan, and the feeling that one is being given mercy when one sees the face of God. So these two things are interrelated. That at the same time as I see God, I feel love of God. I feel love from God. This is borne out in many extracts. Next one. The Lord is further described as having the mark of Srivatsa, or the sitting place of the goddess of fortune, right here. And his bodily hue is deep bluish. The Lord is a person. He wears a garland of flowers, and he is eternally manifest with 4 hands, which hold a conch, shell, wheel, club, and lotus flower. The entire body of the Supreme Person, Vasudeva, is decorated. He wears a valuable jeweled helmet, necklets and bracelets and necklaces. His neck is adorned with the Kaustuba jewel, and he is dressed in yellow silk garments. The Lord is decorated with small golden bells around his waist, and his lotus feet are decorated with golden ankle bells. All his bodily features are very attractive and pleasing to the eyes. He is always peaceful, calm and quiet, and very pleasing to the eyes and mind. Real yogis meditate upon the transcendental form of the Lord as he stands on the whorl of the lotus of their hearts, the jewel-like nails of his lotus feet glittering. The Lord is always smiling, and the devotee should constantly see the Lord in this form as he looks very mercifully toward the devotee. In this way, the meditator should look toward the Supreme Person, the bestower of all benedictions. And then another from a description of Krishna. This is particularly beautiful. I've just extracted these to share with you the beauty of Godhead. Wearing a peacock feather ornament upon his head, blue karnika flowers on his ears, a yellow garment as brilliant as gold, and the Vaijayanti garland, Lord Krishna exhibited his transcendental form as the greatest of dancers as he entered the forest of Vrindavan, beautifying it with the marks of his footprints. He filled the holes of his flute with the nectar of his lips, and the cowherd boys sang his glories. Wonderful. So that was the second part of the beauty of the form of the Absolute. Now we come to a section on Krishna's expansions. So you will have heard that although God is very old, the oldest of all, he remains as a blooming youth, never ages. Rather than the depictions in the Sistine Chapel of God being an old man with a long white beard, God is depicted in the East, in contrast to Europe, as a youthful form. So each of these images of God come from Shastra. You'll find a correlation in Shastra as to the images of Krishna, the colour of Krishna, the beauty of Krishna. There's no contradiction. But what you will find is that there's different expansions of Krishna. Krishna is simply the name of the most attractive form of the Absolute. And when we turn to the pages of the Brahma Samhita, an ancient book, collection of prayers, we find that the origin, the original illumination is a candle, and it's one, just as one candle lights many other candles, so the original Krishna can light, if you like, many different expansions. Each of them is brilliant. Each of them has the same illumination, same candle power, but one is always the original. So in the same way, each of the different forms and expansions of Krishna can act purely as Krishna, although the original candle, the original Godhead is there. So Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Godhead is one, but there are many persons. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we talked about this Greek word, hypostasis. You won't find this in Prabhupada's books, but I thought it was useful, because sometimes we speak to Western theologians who want to know what we believe. So hypostasis means a hierarchy of forms and manifestations, one generated from the previous one, yet all sitting within the original and omnipotent Godhead, the one substantive reality. That's the Western definition. If you speak to a philosopher, they would give you that. So our understanding is exactly the same. One Godhead, many forms. So each of them is an individual person, but they have different powers. They are in unity with the original personality of Godhead. But there's a complexity. Sometimes there's an expansion. Sometimes there's an incarnation. Sometimes there's an empowered human being that has some of the properties of God. So when we know these different categories, we won't get fooled into thinking that a human being has somehow become God, or that a prophet has become a mouthpiece for God, in contradiction to God's messages which have been revealed previously. So we should have all these categories understood and the relative powers understood. Then there's no confusion. So there's 3 words I want you to write down if you're watching this and you have a pen and paper. One is Swayam Rupa. Swayam Rupa. S-V-A-Y-A-M. Swayam Rupa. Swayam Rupa means his own form. Swayam is always own. Swa, me, my, his, hers. Swayam. Swayam Rupa. Rupa is form. So Krishna's own form is the original cowherd boy in the forest. That's his own form. Second word, Tad, T-A-D, hyphen, Ekatma, E-K-A-T-M-A, Tadikatma, Rupa, which means an expansion of many forms for different purposes. Then the one we just talked about, Avesh Rupa, that's the third, Avesh, A-V-E-S-H. Avesh means it is someone an empowered, like a saint or a son of God or a prophet of God, like that. Avesh Rupa. Avesh means immersed. Like if you fall in a swimming pool, you're immersed in water. If you fall into Godhead, you're immersed in Godhead. But you haven't become an incarnation. Do not think of yourself as such, and do not allow other people to think of that. So, Swayam Rupa, form of Krishna, is self-manifesting. It's eternal. It's always there. It doesn't depend on any other state of existence. And it's called Krishna's essential form. Krishna's essential form. The root form of Krishna. Now the Tadikatma Rupa, the expansion, exists simultaneously with the Swayam Rupa. His powers are the same, but the bodily features are different. So there are many categories and subcategories of Tadikatma Rupa. And the Avesh Rupa we've discussed, when an empowered jiva carries a certain energy of Krishna. They may be very, very powerful, but it only lasts for the duration of their life. So a person can be an Avesh Rupa, having a power of Godhead, but it lasts for 70 or 80 years and then it's gone. So now we go back to Swayam Rupa. Okay, you ready? Swayam Rupa's got 2 aspects, Prabhava and Vaibhava. Prabhava and Vaibhava. Prabhava and Vaibhava. So the Prabhava is when Krishna expands himself into numerous identical forms, like we see this painting of Krishna and he's dancing in the Rasa Leela dance, the circle dance of eternity. And this is Krishna's highest mode to dance with his eternal surrendered souls. Or indeed, when Krishna expands himself into different forms for each of his queens. Same thing as the Prabhava means that Krishna is identical in form, but he has manifested himself to enjoy the company of many, many others. Either the gopis in Vrindavan or the queens of Dwarka. Prabhupada writes, when the Lord married 16,108 wives at Dwarka, he expanded himself into many forms. These expansions and the expansions of the Rasa dance are called Prabhav Prakash, according to scripture. So that's Prabhav Prakash. The Vaibhav Prakash is another one. So I want you to imagine a branch that then branches, and then one of those branches branches off again. Complicated, I know, but we won't do too much tonight. The Vaibhav Prakash is Krishna's different features according to his emotions. So this is where Krishna changes shape. He can assume different shapes according to different pastimes, according to different devotees that he's doing it for. And this manifests in different colors or weapons or leelas. This is the Vaibhava Prakash. So the first Vaibhava Prakash is Balaram. This is when Krishna manifests. Sometimes Prabhav Prakash is manifested or is used as a term for when Krishna manifests himself as a youthful warrior in Dwarka. So the Vrindavan form of Krishna is the highest and original. Prabhav Prakash is in Dwarka. Now sometimes Krishna may have his Dwarka form, and then that Dwarka form may expand. So there's a Prabhava of the Vaibhava form. You following? Watch this back. Watch the video back. So Prabhupada says here, if one form or feature is differently manifest according to different emotion features, it is called Vaibhava Prakash. The first manifestation of the Vaibhava feature of Krishna is Sri Balaram. Sri Balaram and Krishna have different bodily colors, but otherwise Sri Balaram is equal to Krishna in all respects. An example of Vaibhava Prakash is the son of Devaki. He sometimes has 2 hands and sometimes 4 hands. So, how are we doing? So now, the Vaibhava Prakash, it's another little twig coming out of that branch, expands into the Tadikatma Rupa, a form which is non-different in power from the original Swayam Rupa, but appears to be different because of some emotion or some bodily features and activities. So that's the Vaibhava Prakash. First we have Swayam Rupa. We're branching. So the Tadikatma Rupa has 2 types. And this is the last expansion I'll tell you about tonight. Svamsa, or personal, and Vilas, or pastime. Prabhupada uses this word pastime, doesn't he? If you look it up, it's an Old English word which means something you do to pass your time, like playing chess or knitting or crochet or softball or whatever, swimming or whatever it is you do to pass your time. You do it because you enjoy it. You do not do it because someone is paying you to do it. If someone is paying you to do it, we call that work. And if you're not being paid to do it, but you do it because you love it, it's called a pastime. Now for devotees, for us in the Vaishnava philosophical circles, when we say pastime, we think that, well, only Krishna has pastimes, but no, we all have pastimes. They're just not eternal, and they're just not productive of bliss. That's all. Well, I suppose you could crochet something and that would give you bliss, or play softball and that would give you bliss. But the point here as a pastime is the English translation of the word lila. The Sanskrit word lila is sometimes translated as play or sport, but Prabhupada chose to translate it as pastime, which was a current word, I guess, in the Victorian days when Prabhupada was learning his English language. So pastime, something that Krishna does, not for work, but it's his pleasure. Even when he lifts Govardhan Hill, which is a story from the later volumes of the epic Bhagavad Purana, even when Krishna is lifting Govardhan Hill, it's a pastime. He's doing it because he likes to do it. So the Vilas form of the Tadakatmarupa is different from the original form due to Krishna's desire to perform different pastimes. But it is very slightly less in qualities. Yes, sometimes there's different differentiation. So I have written, in a potentially confusing cascade of subcategories, the Vilasa or pastime expansions are again manifested in two ways, Prabhava Vilas or Vaibhava Vilas. Prabhava Vilas means pastimes in an identical form, and you'll see where we're going with this. Vaibhava Vilas means when one form or feature is manifested differently. And for this, my dear students, you will need a chart. You really need a chart, don't you? You really need a diagram. Those of us, including myself, who learn visually would much appreciate a picture. So if anyone can draw a picture, that would be good. Now, that ends the... So our first section was about beauty of Krishna's form. Then we talked about expansions. Then we talk now, this is the third part, we talk about the secondary forms of Krishna. Secondary forms of Krishna. These are the candles that have been lit by the original candle, or the candle that was lit by a third candle or fourth candle that's lit by the third candle or second candle. So Krishna has secondary forms known as vyuhas. We sort of did this a little bit last time. Divine formations. So the word for four in Sanskrit is chatur, and formation is vyuha. So chatur vyuha, the four forms. This is very much studied in Pancharatra, in the business of becoming a devotee of Krishna. You may not need this so much, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, whose birthday it is tomorrow as we speak, explained this first of all to Sanatana Goswami. So we will do. And these names also come up with the Greeks as well, seeing as we're talking about the Greeks. There was a Greek tax collector who came to India, and on the borders of India his name was Heliodorus, and he became a devotee of Vasudeva, and he erected a pillar, and he said this pillar is being, and he writes in Greek, this pillar is being erected by Heliodorus, devotee of the god Vasudeva. And then Vasudeva and Balaram also appear on coins in a part of the empire that had been conquered by the Greeks. So this is way out in Afghanistan way, or Bactria. So I just want you to know how this is how far Krishna goes out in ancient days. But these names, Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. Okay. The sequence of Krishna's expansions is that Vasudeva manifests Sankarshan. Sankarshan manifests Pradyumna, and Pradyumna manifests Aniruddha. And all these different, these are known as the original expansions. Then these quadruple forms, They are the source of unlimited quadruple forms, without getting too complicated. Well, maybe we should say it. Vasudev, this is the last bit that is quite complex. Vasudeva expands into Keshava, Narayan, and Madhava. Sankarshan expands into Govinda, Vishnu, and Madhusudan. Pradyumna expands into Trikram, Vamana, and Sridhar. And Aniruddha expands into Rishikesh, Padmanabha, and Damodar. Then from each of the 4 forms, 2 further pastime forms manifest. They're known as 8 Vilasamurtis. I won't read that out. You'll become confused. So altogether there's 24 forms. And on the notes that I send you, there is a chart. Someone has gone to the trouble of creating a chart with the different symbols that are held in the 24 Vishnu's hands. Finally, we talk about the 3 Purushas which come from the Chaturvyuha. So there's Krishna, there's Balaram, there's the Chaturvyuha, then there's the 3 Purushas. Now, you wonder what the 3 Purushas are, but you do know them. Mahavishnu, Garbhadakshay Vishnu, and Shiradakshay Vishnu. You must have heard those names before, and you've definitely seen the images. Mahavishnu is the breather out of universes, and into each universe he expands as Garbhadakshay Vishnu. Garbhadakshay Vishnu manifests Brahma, and then Shiradakshay Vishnu is also within the universe as Paramatma and has his own place. So that is the three Purushas. So let's just zoom in a little on this. Sankarshan expands as Mahavishnu. Mahavishnu because he's residing in the causal ocean, completely surrounded by this special type of water. He's known as Karanarnavashai Narayan or Karanadakashai Vishnu. Karanadakashai Vishnu. He's known as the first Purusha. So he lies down in the causal ocean. We're talking something which is very difficult for us to understand. He's in a state of sleep. And at the time of creation, or the time of the manifestation of the universes plural, the souls are woken up and they're injected into the universes. He's in a state. They're awakened from a state of suspended animation within him, and out they come. At the time of the dissolution of the universe, the souls are ingested by him. Therefore, it is not just many lifetimes that we have to think about, that we have been residing in the material world, but many cycles of creation and dissolution. How long does it take to come to the point of Krishna consciousness, or consciousness of the absolute truth? Krishna himself says after many, many births and deaths, thousands of births and deaths. So then this first Purusha, this Karanadakashai Vishnu, Karananavashai Vishnu, enters into each universe in the form of Garbhadakshay Vishnu, who is a manifestation of Pradyumna. So Sankarshan manifests as Mahavishnu, and from Mahavishnu comes the Pradyumna manifestation and the second Purusha. Now, this Vishnu lies on a couch of snakes and is attended by his consort Lakshmi. He gives birth to Brahma. Brahma gives birth to Shiva, and each universe begins. The third Vishnu is manifest from Garbhadakshay Vishnu, is a manifestation of Aniruddha, who is the fourth Vyuha, but the third Purusha. Try and keep up. So all of these things are part of the great hypostasis or hypostatic arrangement of the Godhead. And when we say that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. We mean that Krishna is the original candle, Krishna is the original source upon whom all the other expansions and plenary portions and incarnations are all dependent. We talked a little bit about this strange phrase that the spiritual world is 3/4 of reality and the material world is 1/4 of reality. That was a very strange thing, because how can you have 3/4 of infinity and 1/4 of infinity? It's one of those Vedic koans. You just have to allow it to puzzle your brain. Indeed, one time I had a godbrother still alive. His name was Narahari, and he asked Srila Prabhupada at Bhaktivedanta Mana a question. And the answer to this question he will always remember. He said, Srila Prabhupada, how can we understand that Mahavishnu is breathing out universes? Prabhupada just looked at him and gave him a look. He said, you will never understand with your puppy brain. Now, do you think this was a dismissive comment, but it only made him want to serve his guru more? So there are different planes, different planets. There is the Paravyoma, the spiritual sky. Each of the Vishnu forms has a separate planet. When you look at the color jacket of the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, you'll see the whirl of the lotus, in which is depicted the Vrindavan Leela of the Lord, and around that the various spiritual planets. So plenary expansion of Krishna presides over each of those planets, and those planets are known as Vaikuntha, and the supreme planet of Vaikuntha is known as Goloka. The others are known as Narayan Loka or Vishnu Loka. So we have two books that support what I've just been saying. One is called the Siddhartha Samhita. Everyone knows the name of Siddhartha. Famous book by Hermann Hesse. This is Siddhartha. It means the perfection of desire. And in that book it's described that the different Vishnus carry different weapons in different hands. And the form of the Lord and the name of the Lord can be ascertained by which form you the positions of the weapons. And that same list and depiction also appears in the Hayashirsha Pancharatra. And these weapons are two, you could say, for devotees and two for demons. But they're all for devotees, really. The club and the wheel, or the Sudarshan Chakra, is meant for opponents, you could say, and feature in different leelas. And the lotus and the conch are for mercy. So mercy and justice are equally balanced within the form of Narayan. So these 24 names of the Lord are known as Chaturvimshati, and sometimes we talk of the Chaturvimshati Nam. We sometimes recite these. Sometimes they're done as a nyas. Sometimes they're done when we put on. This is clay markings are known as tilak. Keshavaya Nama, Narayana Nama, Madhavaya Nama, Govindaya Nama, Vishnavaya Nama, Madhusudanaya Nama, Trivikamaya Nama, Vamanaya Nama, Shriddharaya Nama, Rishikeshana Padmanabhaya Nama, Damodaraya Nama, Vasudevaya Nama. Then Sankarshanaya Nama, Anirudaya Nama, Pradyumnaya Nama, Anirudaya Nama, Vedashodhamaya Nama, Lokshajaya Nama, Om Narasimhaya Nama, Chutana Nama, Janardana Nama, Bandraya Nama, Om Hare Nama, Om Krishnaya Nama. This is done as nyas. These 24 names, or Chaturvimshati, is done as a nyas every morning. I also do this. You touch your body in different ways. The upper body is touched. And the name of the Lord is uttered. So once 12 times when you do tilak, and then 24 times when you do your nyas. Classic training, and comes in the Pancharatra handbooks. Finally, I will be sending you a chart of these different names. If you simply send me your email, then I will do it. No one will call. There is no charge. Thank you very much for watching. Namaste. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Good. Well, I must say that was another very, very professionally done broadcast. How are you all? That was 40 minutes. That's not so bad, is it? 40 minutes, not so bad.